Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Language Arts Gallery. We've talked a lot about comparative essay writing, and what I want to do in this video is I want to talk about how we can argue from a unique point of view when we're writing a comparative essay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through an essay where we take two topics of comparison. In this case, we're going to be comparing two countries that appear very different on the surface. And we're going to argue that they're similar. Now, you can take the same approach from a different perspective by taking two things that seem very similar and arguing that they're very different. But we're going to walk through this so you have a little bit better understanding of how you can do this and how an essay is structured. So let's go ahead and get started.
So when we take a really unique perspective in a comparative essay, we want to look at two topics for comparison and think about how they appear at first glance. So here I've got an essay on North and South Korea. It would be very easy for someone to look at these two countries and immediately talk about how different they are. So because they seem so different on the surface, particularly because of politics and economics, we want to take a unique perspective, and we're going to argue about how they're similar. We do want to acknowledge the differences, but our argument is going to weigh more heavily on the similarities between these two nations. And we could do this from a different perspective with two different topics for comparison. If two things seemed very similar, we might argue about how they're very different. So let's take a look at this essay, and we're going to go through each part of the essay, and we're going to talk about how the author adheres to all of the rhetorical features of a good academic essay. So right away, he starts out with a sentence that hooks the reader. It gets the reader's attention. North Korea and South Korea have been divided for over half a century. Then the author says, the two nations stand in stark contrast due to their divergent political and economic paths. So he's acknowledging that they seem very different. Okay, but I'm going to jump ahead to the thesis statement here, which is our last sentence. Then the author says North and South Korea may be divided by their political and economic systems, but they are united by their shared historical background and cultural heritage. So right here, the author is making an argument for their similarities. And I want to take a look at this one sentence here. Expatriates and academics alike need to understand the striking commonalities between these two countries. So here what the author is doing is he's giving us the significance of comparison. He's telling us why this is an important essay to read, for whom it's important. So I know that the author said initially that they're divided by their political and economic systems. And that's what the author is going to address in that first body paragraph. To begin, the political and economic systems of North and South Korea represent a stark difference between the two nations. So I can see that the author's got a great transitional phrase here. He's letting the reader know that this is where he's starting off with his argument. And then as we go through the details of this first body paragraph, we can really see how these two countries are very different politically and economically. So we can see North Korea is a communist nation. There's a single party system led by the Kim dynasty. The government has tight control over all aspects of life, including the economy. It's state run and it's centralized. There's widespread poverty. There's isolation. And then I've got a great phrase to signal a difference. In contrast, South Korea is a democratic republic with a vibrant market-based economy, experiencing rapid economic growth and development. It's one of the world's leading economies, known for technological advancements and global trade. This difference in political and economic systems has resulted in vastly different living standards and international relations for the two Koreas. So I can see right there, the author is really focusing on the contrasts. But if I go back to that thesis statement, I know that the next part of the essay is going to focus on similarities related to shared historical backgrounds and cultural heritage. So let's go ahead and take a look here. Moving on. So I've got a great transitional phrase there to start. Moving on. Despite their political divide, North and South Korea share a common historical background that dates back to ancient times. Now, I'm going to see a lot of language here for comparison. Both nations trace their origins to the early Korean kingdoms, such as the Goguryeo, the Baekje, and the Shilla, which laid the foundation for Korean culture and society. This shared history, again, there's a comparative word, includes the influence of Confucianism, Buddhism, and the development of the Korean language Hangul, created during the Joseon dynasty. The shared history also encompasses the painful experience of Japanese colonialism from 1910 to 1945 and the subsequent division of Korea after World War II. These historical experiences have shaped the national identity of both North and South Koreans, providing a common ground despite their contemporary differences. Okay, so we see a lot of language for comparison there. So let's go ahead and move to our next body paragraph. In addition, so we're starting out with another great transition phrase. The cultural traditions of North and South Korea reveal significant similarities that have persisted despite the division. Both countries celebrate traditional holidays such as Chuseok, the Harvest Festival, and Seollal, Lunar New Year, which involve family gatherings, traditional foods, and ancestral rituals. The Korean language, with its dialectical differences, remains mutually intelligible, and both Koreas take pride in their rich heritage of music, dance, and art. Traditional Korean cuisine, including dishes like kimchi, bulgogi, and bibimbap, is enjoyed on both sides of the border. Additionally, cultural practices such as the emphasis on respect for elders and the importance of family ties are deeply ingrained in both societies. These continuities reflect the deep-rooted heritage that unites North and South Korea. So again, we see all this language talking about how similar these two countries are. So two of our three body paragraphs are really focusing on similarities as opposed to differences. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our conclusion. In conclusion, great signposting there. While North and South Korea are divided by their political and economic systems, they share significant similarities in their historical background and cultural traditions. So the author signposts and restates the thesis for the reader. The stark contrast in their governance and economic structures highlights the profound impact of political ideologies, yet the shared history and enduring cultural practices underscores the common heritage that links the two nations. So there's a great summary there. Understanding these differences and similarities enriches the perspective of expatriates and traveling academics. Remember, that's the significance of comparison, and it's restated in our conclusion. And finally, the author wants to leave the reader with a strong concluding thought. They say, the complex relationship between North and South Korea continues to characterize the beautiful Korean peninsula. Remember, that last sentence does not want to introduce anything new to the reader. We just want to leave the reader with something to think about after they've read our essay.
Thanks so much for joining us for that video on how to write a comparative essay from a unique perspective. And do remember to like, subscribe, and comment on the video so you can get more videos on academic writing and academic English. And I'll see you in our next video.